Hi guys, welcome to my little review on the KBEar Little Q. This is one of their latest releases. It's a little micro IEM, a fixed cable using a 6mm driver, very much along the lines of the E1000, E2000, E3000 from Final Audio. That kind of philosophy, kind of really small. Cylindrical shell that fits nice and deep, and they actually have it in their, let's say, commercial talk as a sleeping IEM. And yes, I mean, I did use it momentarily for some power naps, mind you, not for some full night sleeping, but for some afternoon siestas. And they very comfortable, no real they don't really bug you in your ears. And even with these tips I can get them nice and deep. And yeah, that's it. Construction is solid enough. It's a metal shell. You can hear that. Metal shell. Yeah, it's fine. The cable is half decent. There's a mic'd version one as well. A little bit. It's got a little bit of a life of its own. It has a tendency of tangling up a little bit, but it's not too microphonic. It looks robust enough. Yeah, and that's it. That's basically the oops. You see what I see about its life of its own? It's basically the life, the Q, the little Q. This is yet another IEM, and we are lucky and not lucky currently, because there's so many things that we just are overwhelmed into what we will choose. But it's another one of these IEMs that was actually a pleasant surprise. Why a pleasant surprise? Because, as I just said, with a notion of so many things being released every day, the probability of a lot of them not really being anything special is very high. And I'm not going to deny that when I heard about the little Q, the thoughts that crossed my mind, okay, well, another one. And I was actually quite surprised. I was actually really quite pleasantly surprised. Obviously, when I heard it, there were certain things that jumped to my ears straight away, and one of them being the amount of bass that it has. But it hasn't got this just like monotone bass, just boom, boom, boom. No, it's actually got a decent enough bass for a small little 6mm driver. It actually does have a fair amount of texture and quality, and fair enough, it's not a quick impactful bass in the sense of in and out like a BA or like a proper dynamic driver bass. But for what it is, for a 6mm driver, with the obvious physical limitation that brings upon it, it's fast enough, has decent enough let's say quickness, decay. It's got a nice texture, nice ability to be resolving more complex tracks, and it's got, above all, this really very easygoing, nice tonality. So it's a very easy IEM to like it. I think the majority of people that will listen to this, unless you just hate bass altogether, will find the sound signature of the little Q quite entertaining. And on that topic of the sound signature, let me introduce you to the little Q, graphically at least, since physically we've already seen it. Anyway, let me just change this over to the screen so we can see. Okay, and that's the graph of the little Q. Alright, you might say, oh my god, what a crazy V-shaped signature. I mean, we're talking about everything sitting between so that's like 78 dBs there, 94, 93. So everything sits within a 13 dB window. And you look at this graph and you think, oh, okay, this thing's just going to be all about the boom and all about just being sluggish and boring. And look, the truth is, we have to approach things for what they are. And for what this is, it's nice. It's very reminiscent of an MH755, and that was a nice IEM. I mean, MH755 from Sony is an icon. You know, it's fair enough. It got its success later on in its life, when for years it was coming as the IEM that came in many of their consoles, and even with phones in certain markets. It came with the smartphones. So it was an IEM that was only really truly recognized later on, and that's the reason why you have so many clones of it today. Obviously, the clones are not really great, but anyway, the original MH755 and the original MH750 were great IEMs, and this is kind of following that kind of philosophy. All right, this follows that philosophy of a thick bass, which is half decently executed, and then the upper frequencies are decent. It peaks at 3K, as you can see, which is not bad. And if I really have to look at it and say, okay, fault it, well, it's just got that peak there at 7 that honestly doesn't really bug me, because at 5K, which is an area where it will bother most people, it's actually subdued as compared to what is around it. So overall, it sounds decent. It sounds okay. It's not like aggressive. It's not trying to rip your ears out or anything. It's got half acceptable extension up top, decent enough amount of twinklies, like I like calling it, and detail, and the technicalities are what they are. Sound stage is okay, well, not the greatest. Imaging, okay, but actually the imaging is better than the sound stage. The tonality and the tone is, for the most part, actually not bad. It's pretty decent. A little bit colored, yes, and will probably be more suited for male voices than female voices. But come on, people, we buy this, as KBEar says, to sleep. We buy this to take it to the gym. We buy this to go run. We don't buy this to now be worried about critical listening and does this thing sound perfect, and will I hear the 1812 overture with perfection and blah blah blah. Come on, let's tone it down a little bit. I mean, I think we demand so much that then in reality, when things when push comes to shove, it's not like that. It's the same story that happens with smartphones. We want to have the latest iPhone 13, 14, 15. I don't know what iteration it is. We want to have the latest Samsung S500, whatever. But then the truth is, we don't use it to even a fifth or 10th or 20th of its potential. That's the reality. I've got 2 or 3 smartphones, and I've still got a Poco F1, which is my daily driver. It's a smartphone, but that by all intents and purposes is more than outdated. 2018. So by smartphone timeline, it's a prehistoric item, and it works fine. It does what it's supposed to do fine. So okay, I don't have the latest crazy 50 or 60 or 100 megapixel camera, but you know what? It takes half decent pictures. Filming is fine. Even the phone that I'm now using to do this video is a phone which is now 3 years old. It's perfect. And the same thing happens with IEMs. We all get very much caught up on, oh, hold on, this happens, and this has happened very much with KZ in the last couple of weeks. Oh, the KZ EDA. Okay, fine, whatever. Then comes out the KZ EDA Ultra, and the Ultra's got just a little bit extra extension up top, but it dropped a little bit here, there. And we all want to fool ourselves in believing that, yes, the differences are monumental and the differences are justifiable, and that we now need to go spend an extra $20 or $25 to buy the EDA, the EDX Ultra. And then the Lyra comes out, and now we find again excuses to, when if we actually sit down, breathe in and out a couple of times, and listen carefully, the differences are not huge. They're not huge. Yes, they've fine-tuned it a little bit. They've adjusted it a little bit here and there. They've improved it. But overall, it's very similar. And, if you don't have any of them, then yes, go for the latest version. Go for the one that's the most recent one. But if you do have, the reasoning to upgrade is perhaps not justifiable. And the same thing applies itself here with the KBEar Little Q. If you don't have any of the IEMs, which I'm comparing it with here, namely the Rose Techniques Photon, the Tanstrom Tanya, the Astrotech Vesna, or the HC Sound Waystrom, then yes, then it's a perfect candidate, because, and I'll get into it in a few seconds, It's got a nice, engaging, fun sound. It is fine. It is a perfectly fine IEM. There's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, if you've got the others, and I will now do a quick comparison with the others, then maybe it doesn't make sense to go for it unless you want to have a different flavor as compared to some of the ones which are here. Okay, let me first compare it here with one of the IEMs which immediately jumped to mind when I was listening to the... There we go. That's the curve of the waist drum. And straight away you see a lot of similarities. And the biggest difference, or the biggest thing that you notice between the two, obviously, is in the bass, below 200 hertz, which, on the one hand, does give the waist drum this more, slightly more open sound, more detailed, more resolving, okay, but not by a huge amount. But the fact that it's so thin in the bass, as compared especially to the little Q, does detract away from it in male voices, does detract away from it some authenticity with regards to how some instruments to play, does remove from the waist drum some realism in some music genres. But having said all of this, I recommend the waist drum. And why do I recommend the waist drum? I recommend the waist drum for those of us that, for example, were fans of the DQ-SM Hermit, which wanted a more open, more detailed sound, okay, and liked vocals, and the waist drum is very, very good for that. It's perfect for that. If I compare it with the little Q, voices are more correct. They're more open, especially female voices, because not having all that energy in the bass like we have here on the little Q, it just helps out. It just makes it come across more to the liking of that specific sound profile. Okay, that's it compared to the waist drum. I'm going to compare it straight away, and you will understand why, with the Rose Techniques. And again, you look and oh wow, okay, very similar curve, and yes, very similar curve and very similar sounding as well. The biggest thing, the Photon had a plus point for it, going for it, which the waist drum and the little Q also have, which is the fact it's also got that dip there at around 5K. Okay, that dip there detracts away or takes away a lot of the harshness, but as compared to, for example, just the waist drum, okay, it's got a little bit more extra energy at the low end, which makes it more complete sounding. It sounds more correct. Okay, overall it sounds more correct. It's got a right amount of energy up top, which when pushed hard, yes, can start losing its composure. But overall, the Photon is I can resume it by saying that the Photon is a waist drum with more energy in the bass. The fact that it has a 8mm driver as well, as compared to the waist drum, obviously allows it to play louder. Although the sound is very similar, one will play louder than the other. Okay, but as you can see, waist drum red, Photon green, and the little Q in blue. They all have kind of a very similar gene pool, and the differences is just basically different bass levels. Okay, you would think that the little Q, by having the most bass graphically, at least, it would be the one that sounds the darkest or the muddiest, and no, it doesn't actually. It does not, and it's down to the fact that it's a 6mm driver. This is the same thing as when we're talking about car audio. You have an 8-inch subwoofer and you have an 18-inch subwoofer. You can have basically both of them reproducing very low frequencies very well. But obviously, the 8-inch will be struggling to reproduce 25 or 30 hertz with significant volume, let's put it that way, while the 18-inch is not even breaking a sweat. And that's basically what happens here. Although graphically it seems that the little Q does have the most bass and will have the most bass out of the three. Well, compared to the waist drum, yes, but compared to the Photon in this particular case, no, that's not the case. The bass quantity is less than the bass quantity of the Photon. In terms of its overall quality, they're very similar. I would say that out of these three, the little Q will probably be the one that's the little more laid back slightly, okay, as you can see there by the fact that it's got the lowest curve, at least in that 4K area, okay. They all, as you can see, peak at around 3K, which is a nice thing. At least in my case, I particularly like it when an IEM peaks at around there. And yeah, that's it. As compared now to, let's take away here the photon and this, let's compare it now to the Astrotech. The Astrotech, and I want to clarify one thing. I've got two versions of the Astrotech. I've got one version, and I'm guessing this is down to maybe some QC issues, but I've got one version of the Astrotech which has got that curve that you see there up top, but the base is way flatter, okay. And that was the Astrotech that I actually reviewed in my last comparison that I used it with, and I said it was an IEM that was on the neutralish side, but it was nice, it was engaging, it was fun, and it actually sounded like it had way more bass than what graphically it was showing. And then I got this other set, which does have graphically the bass bump there in the, the upper mid, the mid bass area, and yes, it is a little bit warmer as compared to the other set, but overall the sound of the two is very, very similar. I would say they're about 94% equal, okay. And I've decided to use this one just for the sake of using this one, honestly. There's no real special reason. I guess the main reason why I use this one was because it is the one that actually is similar to the little Q up top. It's also got again that initial pinna gain peak at 3K, and then it actually maintains itself a little bit, a little bit more smoother between that and then the 8K before it falls off. The Vesna, I praised it, and I praised it again for very nice balanced sound, very, very nice balanced sound. It's an IM which very much reminds me of, let me put here the last one, it reminds me of this, and those of us that are more veteran will know that's the Tanya. And the Vesna and the Tanya are very, very, very similar, very similar. They both have this nice warm mid bass, tonality is great, they've got decent enough extension, although both of them, especially when you compare it to the waist drum and to a certain extent as well to the photon, you notice that the extension, it's not as open, although graphically doesn't seem like it. And I guess it's just down to the fact that it's got that mid bass bump which just emphasizes things slightly. But both of them are very, very good. They both scale super well. Both the Astrotech and the Tanya scale extremely well. And I would say that they are probably the two which are more harmonish in their overall presentation. So vocals are very nice in both. Like I said, extension up top is suffice. Bass has got this nice impact, fullness to it. Not a lot of sub bass rumbles, but it's fine. It's more than acceptable. Okay, the focus here has been more mid bass and mids as opposed to the extremes of the frequency range, and both of them, as you can see, are perfect. And compared here to our little Q, yeah, the little Q has got more bass, and yes, you do notice that there's a little bit more bass, especially the sub bass. More bass in terms of not quantity, but in terms of its quality. Slightly more on the little Q, very slight. It's not a big difference. The little Q does not have the impact that either the Vesna or the Tanya have, and I think it's just down to the way that the profile after 2K then just goes and is done. Although when you look at it, it doesn't seem like, there's big differences. I mean, the Tanya, like you can see, is they're peaking it around. Let's see if I can show you this. The Tanya, as you can see, is peaking there at around 3K. The little Q as well, the same thing. The Vesna also just at a slightly lower level. It's just this kind of profile that the Tanya has, as opposed to the more up and down, of the little Q that it just makes the mids just come across different. It's not a day and night difference. It's not a huge difference. It's not a bad difference. It's just different. This is just a different flavor of presenting itself. Any one of them is honestly pretty good. There's really nothing there to be said. Okay, let's wrap this thing up, because I don't want you guys saying that I bore you to death with my reviews. How can I position this? Well, let's put it this way. We're talking about $20 for that. We're talking about $20 for that. We're talking $20 for this. We're talking $25 for this, and we're talking $30 for that. Okay? If what you want is vocals and clean sound and this waist drum, for me personally, it's thin sounding, and although it kind of replaces the Hermit because of the unavailability or easy unavailability of the Hermit, I still prefer the Hermit over this, to be honest. I still think the Hermit had the same kind of details that this had, but it was just a little bit more fun because it had a little bit more bass. This for me is just a little bit bass light. I have done, however, a modified version of this, which I can do a video on that if you guys want. That is a different story. But the stock one is a little bit light in the bass. Nice details, good vocals and so on, but okay. But that's got its crowd of people that will want it. If you want something which is fun, engaging, half decently correct sounding, will suit some rock music, will suit various genres of music, then the Photon definitely will fill in that bracket, or that need, that requirement. Okay, which then leaves us Tanya, Vesna, and the little Q. And I guess this will come as a surprise, but although I just graphically showed you that they are similar and different at the same time, funny enough, these three end up being the ones which are the more balanced and coherent sounding. Let's put it that way. I know you will be asking, but the Photon graphed similar to that. Yes, but the Photon is just got, you feel, let's say, that it's colored, good colored, but it's colored. Okay, this, it just works well with my music. It just works well. Any of these three work well. I like the overall tonality of the Tanya. It just sounds very, very nice. It scales like an absolute beast. The same thing goes for the Vesna. It's just got this super engaging tonality, scales well, it does everything well. None of these are monsters in terms of technicalities, like I said earlier. Let's look at them for what they are. Okay, these are, put them in your gym bag and let's go. This is surprising in that I just wasn't expecting it to be able to match probably the two more popular recs that I give. Okay, these are the two more popular recs that I give. I just wasn't expecting it, and I guess it's based on that I'm actually placing it here. It is a genuinely nice sounding IEM that, although graphically you look at it and you think, oh my god, this thing is going to be a monster V and it's going to be boring and this and that, it is not as bad as it looks. Okay, and very much happens, it's like when you see some graphs of some OBA sets and you see this monstrous amount of bass and you think to yourself, oh my god, this thing is going to be just all about boom and so on, and then when you listen to it, actually it isn't. It's the same thing here. It's a 6mm driver, so although it's graphically showing a lot of bass, no, it's just got the right amount of bass to match the rest. If there is only a small little thing that I would have liked to have seen, would have been that 7K peak to have been just slightly lower, so kind of try and make it emulate more the curve of, let's say, the Tanya, which peaks at 3 and then slopes all the way down. That's the only thing that I would do. Perhaps, who knows, maybe they'll come out with a little QS or a little Q Pro or a little Q Plus or something. Who knows? You never know. And they might correct and fine-tune these little details. But overall, I find this to be for me at least, for my ears, for my music, very much an IEM that reminded me of the Sony MH755, and well, it was just a nice IEM, and that's this is just a nice IEM. You either like it or you don't like it, obviously, but it's a nice IEM. Anyway, guys, hope you liked this little take of mine on the little Q, and as always, like and subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask. Yeah, that's it. Take care. Bye bye.